Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
Tom Lucy is another one of my favourite new comedy talents on the circuit. His relaxed style, as if he's been performing for 30 years, makes you believe he is a lot older than he actually is. I worked with him when he was 22 years old, and I never had that confidence at his age. I didn't start showing any signs of stage confidence until my late 20s, but then everyone is different. Tom is different, and that's what stands out, and it's what you need in that comedy world. That's when the top comedy agency, Off the Curb, came calling, when they saw that something special. Tom has performed at the Edinburgh Festival 2017 and 18, and he's picked up rave reviews. In spring 2019, Tom embarked on his first UK tour. I speak to Tom about Jude Law, about his podcast with Maisie Adams, about gout, stand-up in school assembly, the way he holds a microphone, working at the O2. We talk about Lee Evans, Off the Curb, and we talk about meeting our audience. I've got a bit of an obsession with comedy. I love watching sitcoms, stand-up comedians, anything comedy, comedy magic, comedy hypnotism, comedy everything. Panel shows with comedy, but they've got to be funny. There's some unique entertainers that stand out, and that's what I'm trying to depict in these podcasts, is pick out those ones that stand out, and hopefully they'll come along and have a little chat with us. There's this show that I watch with Jerry Seinfeld called Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. I could have called my podcast Comedians on the Phone Talking to a Ventriloquist Without a Dummy, Getting Coffee, Tea, or whatever they want to drink because they're in their own homes. But I've come up with Eyes and Teeth instead, and I've explained that in the first podcast. During lockdown 1, maybe even lockdown 2, people were coming up with new ideas, to start little businesses again. And local businesses, very important, by the way, to support and continue to support and to search your local area for local businesses. My friend, Helen Moore Jackson in Eastbourne, she's also an incredible Adele tribute and wonderful, wonderful performer in her Diva show. Check that out. But Helen came up with this thing called Swoove. And maybe it's a franchise, I'm not sure, but it's where you do dancing and singing and a workout, or a workout with singing. So you're doing workout, but while you're singing, it's called Swoove, which is nice, sort of singing to the groove, which I kind of liked. And I wanted to come up with my own one. So I was thinking of going swimming with all my comedy mates, but calling it Swomedy. So we're all swimming, but telling jokes. And if you're not laughing now, have no fear, because this next guy will make you laugh. Please welcome Tom Lucy.
Sorry, but the person you've called is not available. Please leave your message after the tone.
Eyes and Teeth.
Hello?
Hi, Tom.
Hello, Steve. How are you?
Thanks for joining me on Eyes and Teeth.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, buddy. You've got good eyes and you've got good teeth. And my wife noticed this when we were watching you just the other night on YouTube.
Oh, really?
She called you the Jude Law of the comedy world.
Did she?
She did.
Well, I'll take that. That's very nice.
I think it's because she slightly fancies you, but you know comedy works with the ladies. And there's this quote, I need to find out who it's from. But the quote says, "Funny men are dangerous. They make you laugh, laugh, and laugh, then boom, you're naked." But
I wonder who said that. Bill Cosby, maybe?
There you go. So I left it for you to finish. So
I don't know if that's true. I mean, you're a funny man. Has that been your experience?
Well, no, I think the puppet cancels that out completely.
Yeah.
Did come around my place to see my puppet? It's not going to work for anybody.
Funny. It works as long as there aren't puppets involved.
Yeah, I tried that line once, and clearly it didn't work. Does it work for you? Not with a puppet, obviously.
Well,
but
you're married though, so it's obviously worked a bit.
It did work with her eventually. Yeah, it took a bit of coaxing, but she's now met my puppet, and now she can't get out.
Oh, that's great. Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear.
So, with the exception of Daniel Sloss, do you know Daniel?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not very well, but I do know him.
You've got to be one of the most youngest successful comedians on the circuit, and the youngest gout sufferer as well. Now, I do.
Yeah, this is true.
I do. You've written a whole routine around it. I don't know if you know that gout gag. The only gout gag I know is I went to the doctors and showed him my foot, asked him what was wrong. He said gout, and I said, I've just come in.
No.
You didn't go there.
You told me this 2 years ago. I could have added that to the routine.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, the gout thing was a big... that was a joke I did maybe like 2 or 3 years ago, and I think the first time I did stand-up on TV, I told that joke. And then I had a lot of people, want to talk to me about gout, and that became a big thing. But no, the truth is that I don't have gout.
Okay.
But I thought I might for a bit, and then I went to the doctor, and he said, you might have it because your dad's got it. So it was I just thought it was funny, the idea that I might have gout at 12. I think I was like 19 or 20 then.
Really? Wow. I mean, it's such a funny routine, the way you put it over. But I started to worry when you were doing it, and you don't know whether comedy is real or not, what part of it's real. But I drink a lot of red wine and eat a lot of cheese, so I started panicking after I watched that.
Yeah.
I got a check up.
The thing, my dad, he's basically not allowed to drink red wine or eat cheese because it flares up his gout.
Oh,
so,
bless. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, my mate drinks a lot of rum, and he got gout. But anyway, let's get off the gout. I'm sorry I brought the gout up, but
no, let's make this a whole podcast about gout
and
how to live with it.
I know. I mean, the gout, I suppose, it's quite a rare thing in young people. But I mean, the thing that's not rare in young people is podcasts. And I apologise because I've asked you to come on the podcast, and you do your own podcast, which is great. It's Tom Lucy +1, isn't it? How's that going?
Well, yeah. I mean, that was a podcast I did about, I guess, 2018, a couple of years ago, and we did like 7 or 8 episodes, which I really enjoyed, and we got some amazing guests on. And then, I mean, I don't know if this is your experience of it, but it's quite a lot. It's quite time consuming to do a podcast and to put guests all the time and to edit them and all of this stuff. So I ended up basically just doing 8 episodes, and then it sort of stopped really. But then
I wish I had your discipline. I'm on my 40th. But the thing is, I've only put 10 of them out, Tom, but they literally take about 7 to 8 hours per episode. But because of the booking, the interview, and the research, and then the editing, it's an enjoyable process. I've not had any work this year, so I've had time to do it. But
recently I've started doing a new one with there's a great comedian who you might know called Maisie Adam.
Yes, I just saw some of that earlier actually. That's
funny.
funny.
So we do this. We host this podcast together for Radio X.
Okay.
Called That's a First, which is where we get people on and they tell stories about the first time they did something, and they can tell any story they want, and it's great. It's
that can go anywhere, couldn't it? Comedy wise.
Yeah, no, it's fun, but it's a lot easier because there's a whole production team involved. Whereas when I did the other one, it was literally just me trying to do everything.
Yes.
So it's a much easier experience.
Brilliant. I saw a little bit of that with you and Maisie earlier. Actually, it's nice. I'll spread the link after this. It's really, really nice to see some fresh material coming really just from chatting, isn't it? And you're really good at bouncing off people. So I've seen that in your stand-up. You can bounce off people in the audience, and getting people on your show. You can do that within the podcast as well.
Yeah, I really enjoy that. Actually, it's one of the things I like the most about doing gigs is chatting to the crowd, and I've sort of had to kind of rein it in a little bit because I was doing so much of it that I wasn't really, doing any material, and then that's sort of it's good because it's a good skill to have to be able to do that. But when you've got to write hour-long shows, you need to actually work on the material and stop chatting to the crowd. And
definitely.
I find that so fun that I end up just doing that. So.
It's nice going off the script but knowing where you have to come back to. Like Ross Noble, I'm a big fan of, and he is obviously renowned for not having a script and never coming. Well, he comes back to what he starts with, but I think at the end of the day, he's got hundreds of hours of material because you got to have that mind.
I've been trying to write material and I allow myself 1 or 2 moments in the material where I'm allowed to go into the crowd. And then I have to come back to the script, and that is the only way I find I can do it, is by giving myself set times when I'm okay, when I talk about this, I'm allowed to do 5 minutes of chat, and then I have to come back to the material, and that's quite helpful.
Yeah, so it's a rule now. You kind of put that in.
Kind of is, yeah. And apart from when I do quite a lot of emceeing and hosting, and that's mainly just chatting to the audience, which is fine. But it's more like when you're doing a set, you need to rein it in a bit.
Yeah, definitely. I saw a set on YouTube on Top Secret, the comedy club gig, and I think you're in your hometown of Guildford, but I think you spent the whole of the act. Everyone just telling you that they went to school with you, and it was hilarious. It was hilarious. Have you been heckled by these people in your class or people that knew you? But you got the whole room in hysterics just because of that, and then you had to go.
I know, yeah. Well, that's the problem. Yeah, I do really like all that stuff, and quite often I get to the end of a 20-minute gig and I haven't really done any of the material I was planning to do, which is in a way a good thing. But when you're trying to write and turn over material, it's not the most helpful thing.
No, not when you're testing out a new routine. You need to get that out there eventually. Did you?
I get so distracted, I can't help it. I just get I just, if I'm on stage and someone's wearing a hoodie that says something on it, I just immediately ask why they're wearing that, or I just get so distracted by people in the audience. I can't help it.
I do, but obviously I'm not brave like you. I hide behind my characters, and so I use that through my dummy. So if I see somebody wearing something strange, I'm on them, but I do it through the dummy, if you know what I mean. It has to be...
Yeah, that's nice. You're a bit safer there, aren't you?
I get away with it a bit more, whereas the tin of tomatoes are coming direct towards you, not towards your hand.
Yes, that's true, yeah.
Well, hopefully not. Eyes and teeth. Did you know you were funny before people started telling you that you were?
I think I was a kind of classic example of a class clown.
Okay.
I know that's a bit of a embarrassing thing to admit, but yeah, I think I was that when I was at school, and I didn't really care that much about grades or work or anything like that. My main sort of focus at school was just trying to make people laugh in the classes, and weirdly I started doing stand-up whilst I was at school, so I would get up at the school assembly and do stand-up about the school.
Really? Wow.
In front of all the other students and teachers, and I would write 5-minute routines about stuff in the school, like the canteen, or I'd do a joke about the headmaster, and I would just write it and then do it in front of the whole school. It was quite weird.
That's amazing to hear how early you've started that. That's brilliant to hear. I've never heard anyone do that in their school assembly before as a stand-up.
Well, yeah, it was. I mean, it was. Looking back on it, it was quite odd. It didn't feel weird at the time.
Yeah.
I think when you're that age, you don't really overthink things too much. But yeah, they had an assembly where anyone could get up and do some sort of performance, and most people did songs they'd written or poems or something.
Okay, yeah.
And I decided to do stand-up, so I just wrote some stand-up about the school, and thank God it went well, because I would have probably had to leave school if it didn't go well, because it would have been so embarrassing.
How was it with the audience? Did you get your laughs, and was that where your bug came along? Where you?
Yeah, I remember it. I mean, it was like a moment in a film where something happens and you change.
Yeah.
It was like a complete revelation, because it went. I mean, I don't want to sound arrogant, but it went really well.
But you were thinking about a couple of hundred people in that assembly, though. It's a big audience to start with, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was also 200 of my mates and teachers, and looking back, it was quite a high pressure gig. But I didn't really think it at the time.
No.
I just sort of did it, and then it went so well, and then I became a bit of a. Before that gig, I was basically an unknown person in the school. I was there, and no one really knew who I was. And then from that point on, I became this sort of famous comedian in the school.
Yeah, they must have had a huge admiration towards you. I mean, but now
all
you're
the kids in their older years were talking to me, and I became this sort of very localized celebrity.
Brilliant.
It was weird.
Because you've done that gig and you're doing so well now. A lot of people in that assembly will be talking about that moment where we saw him on that day, and it's kind of a nice story.
I mean, I've been asked to go back to the school and do
what, to finish off your grades? Or?
Yeah, just to finish the last years.
Oh, that's nice. You're going to come back and do something for them.
Well, I might do, but I'm just a bit worried that... I mean, I would like to do it because I like the people at the school, but I'm also a bit worried that I'm not really famous enough to be to have the kids interested in what I'm saying.
Well,
it's all right if you're Daniel Craig or Idris Elba, but no one's going to know who I am, and it might be a bit embarrassing.
Well, I think it'll be a really nice thing to be televised, something like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It could be a good documentary, actually, going back to the school and
maybe one day.
ripping the piss out of the same teachers if they're still there.
Some of the teachers really didn't like it, actually, and sort of didn't like me as a result of it. Yeah, so it was. I was really putting everything on the line.
I remember mine. I was 13 when I done an assembly as a ventriloquist, and I've got.
Oh really?
I got a picture of me on stage with my puppets and me school uniform and my trainers. they let me change my shoes.
You sort of did the same thing as me then.
I was just. It was just come back to me. It was. I was 13, and I kind of know that little moment where you got that little bit of respect to the playground, and like they kind of know who you are. Because I was a really shy kid. I was sort of hiding all the time behind teachers, So, and then I started hiding behind my dummies. So, but
that weird thing of like, I mean, I guess it maybe happened to you as well. But it was never at school. I was never like good at sport.
No.
I was never like the most intelligent one. I was never like the best at drama. So I didn't really have a thing. And then when I found comedy, I was like, oh, this can be like my thing. And then suddenly, like you find that you're good at something, and also other people like think it's quite a cool thing to be able to do. Yeah. And it just like completely like changed my whole life, really.
I've never been into sports at all. I've just done vent. I've been a ventriloquist since I was 12, and I haven't looked back. I've done talent shows and things, and then I've done holiday parks. But did you still? I kind of lost touch with my friends. You still have Guildford friends that you're still in touch with? Because you went on. You started touring quite early, didn't you? On stand up. So
I did. And for the first like 2 or 3 years, maybe I think I did lose touch with people because I just got completely like absorbed into the world of comedy. Yeah. And I loved it, so I just sort of disappeared and didn't really. I missed a lot of like birthdays and friends' parties, and I was always doing gigs, so I could never go to any of those things. But then in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, I've sort of reconnected with everyone because I sort of realised that as great as that was, I didn't really want to, live a life. There's kind of a balance between, working hard and also having mates.
Losing touch, yeah.
So I found the balance, and now I feel like I've got a nice balance where like I still have a lot of old schoolmates and go to all those events, but I also do gigs on the other nights.
Remember your roots, which is a nice thing. Like Eddie Izzard went to school round here, Eastbourne, and he lives up the. Yeah, his parents live up the road. His dad lives up the road, and he's
really?
I saw him a couple of weeks ago doing it was the first show I went to see actually after the lockdown, and Eddie Izzard,
really?
on the roof of the Bexhill Pavilion, and he's really kept to his roots, which is nice that you're still in touch with your mates there. And I was born in Basingstoke, so just down the road from you actually. Which is
right,
yeah, not too far. I used to go to Guildford a couple of times, see some comedy shows, and
they've got the G Live is the main theatre.
Yeah, that's the one.
Which is when I did a tour last year, and I played G Live on the tour, and I came out on stage, and I looked out, and the audience was like 75% faces I recognised.
Oh no!
Which was like kind of nice, but also really terrifying.
It's like being back in your assembly again, though, isn't it? But you're all grown up.
It was like being in the assembly again. It was very odd.
Couple of old PE teachers at the back.
Yeah, it was. It was like loads of old. My mum had sort of told everyone we've ever met that this show was happening in Guildford. Mums are really good for that. My mum sells out all of my Basingstoke shows. Yeah, I know. Yeah, she's basically part of the promotion team.
Yeah, and you don't have to pay her. Don't tell her that, but that's a good thing. No. You're 24 now, aren't you, Tom?
Yeah, that's right.
The lessons I learned when I was 24, I'd done 3 months in a nightclub in Benidorm, and I was on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had to do an hour every night. I was on after one stripper and 2 blue comedians. Then I would go on 11 o'clock doing a family ventriloquist act. I learned to defend for myself actually because the stag nights would come in and the hen parties, and I I actually learned my graft there in those 3 months. I done 3 months like consecutive nights, and I didn't really leave until the day I flew home. So I also done like 200 holiday parks in my
That
early.
sounds like that story about the Beatles when they went to Munich and did like.
Yeah.
Have you heard that when they went and did like 4 shows a day for a year or something?
Yeah, I think they've done like 8 hours a day, I think, with those sort of bands.
And then they reckon that they came back and then they were the bands who they became.
Yeah, it's incredible. I never ended up in a boy band when I come back, but I did feel I had experience because I honed my act. Now, where did you hone your act? Because you have such confidence as a stand-up. I kind of learnt my confidence really by hiding behind characters. But where do you get your confidence from?
Well, it's just from stage time, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just because I started so young. And I went full in when I started. The year I was 18, I remember working out that I did like 300 gigs in the year I was 18, which is like,
wow,
it's really like
that's incredible.
It's like psychotic, really.
It is a lot.
And that's what, when I said earlier about I kind of lost touch with everyone. That's sort of what I meant, because I was literally just doing it every night. And I didn't really see my family that much, or mates, or any of that. So I was completely obsessed with it at the beginning. So,
it's dedicated then.
It's all through the clubs and the. I feel like I've kind of. It sounds really sort of cringy, but I feel a bit like I've sort of grown up in comedy clubs, because that's where I feel like I've done the majority of my learning. In comedy clubs for the last like 5 years, and it just teaches you so much about, confidence and
people as well.
People, and also like just not even just the stage stuff, but just it's a very like adult world.
Yes.
The world of like nighttime entertainment and all the people who work in those clubs and just being around drunk people all the time. You do, particularly as a sort of 20, 21-year-old, you do learn a lot being in that environment.
Yeah, definitely. Wow.
So yeah, I feel like that was really like my equivalent of university.
The thing about stand-up is if the moment you show vulnerability or you've lost them, but if you come out confident and you've got them in the first 30 seconds, which I've seen a lot of your stand-ups online, and I've seen you live, and you grab them so quickly. You don't show any vulnerability, which is really nice kind of way to be.
One of those things that you learn by doing all those comedy clubs
experience.
Where there's like 300 pissed men in their 50s, and you come out and you're this like 20. And when I was 20, I looked about 12, so that didn't help either. So you just really quickly learn like to toughen up and to just really like hit them hard early, so that they. It's all about like making an audience relax, and making them think that you know what you're doing and they can relax.
Yes.
And if you do that as quickly as possible, then everyone relaxes and then it's fine.
Yeah, I guess you have to stand out as well, don't you, as a stand-up? I've noticed a few things about yourself. There is your age, but you're growing up. That won't always be there, I think. But you still look quite young for your age, which is great, because you write around that basis, don't you? You write around your situation about looking young, and your voice as well. Your voice is you do just talk about your voice being different, and I like the way you hold a microphone. To me, that is different. I've never seen anyone hold the mic, and I really worry you're going to drop it because it's a handheld. But is that just your style that you're comfortable with?
It's really not a deliberate thing. It's just like it's just sort of evolved over the years. But yeah, I think particularly if you're like a white, straight, young man, it's really important to like have things that make you stand out, because there are quite a lot of us knocking around. So my thing was always, and I'm aware this will go, but my thing was always being young. That was always my kind of selling point.
Yeah.
So I always used to like deliberately talk a lot about how young I was, because I knew that was the thing that sort of made me different from everyone else. Yeah,
definitely. But I think the material shines in itself anyway. I think that will obviously that will grow and disappear, but you'll just move on to the next part of your life, I think, you know.
Yeah, the weird thing about this sort of young comedian thing is that you can really ride that train for like quite a long time.
Yeah.
Because even people like Russell Howard, who's now almost 40, he's still like known as the sort of young comedian, and he still wears t-shirts. And so, I mean, I've got a good 15 years, more years of it. But yeah, I also think I'll have that thing that I think Russell Howard had, where the age that you are when you sort of become established is the age you stay for your whole life. So I think for a lot of comedians, I think they all still think of me as being 19 years old. And I think that'll be the case forever. I think that'll always be the way people think about me.
I think because those other comedians that are older, they're always going to be that amount of years older than you. So they're all going to, they'll always see you as that.
Yeah.
So does anything intimidate you at all? Hecklers, large rooms. I mean, you've worked at the O2 and Edinburgh Festival, which can be quite daunting. But I think success in stand-up has to be not showing the fear. So you're not intimidated by any of that now, are you?
Well, I do get nervous about things. Yeah, but it depends. I'll get nervous if it's something that's being filmed for TV or something.
Yeah.
That will make me nervous, just because it's like, it's going to be around forever. And when I did those I've done a couple of tours with Jack Whitehall as his support act.
Okay.
And the last tour we did was like all in arenas. And that at the beginning of that, like I'd never played an arena before. So, and that's a really different skill to playing a comedy club or a theatre.
It has to be. You have to wait. Yeah.
I just kind of had to learn that on the go. And Jack sort of told me a few things about it, and it's just a very different skill to learn. And so when I first started doing that was quite nerve-wracking. Yeah.
Yeah, do you have to wait for the waves of laughter to finish before you carry on? Because I've only watched Lee Evans in that kind of atmosphere of an arena, where it's huge, and then it must be a completely different way of learning the comedy skills.
It is, yeah. It's a lot of it is about like timing, I think. And I mean, I'm by no means an expert at playing those arenas. There are people who've done it for like decades, like Lee Evans or McIntyre But when you go to see those guys, they're so great at filling those big rooms.
Yeah.
But it just comes from like years and years of playing arenas, which is insane. But yeah, you just have to like be a lot bigger than you would in a comedy club, and also slow down, because it just takes quite a while for your voice to get all the way around the room.
Yeah.
So everything. I mean, weirdly with Jack, I remember when he was writing the show. He had a show that was about an hour in theatres, and he said to me that if it's an hour in theatres, it'll be an hour and a half in arenas, because it just takes that much longer to
deliver
do it. So
wow.
So it's just all things like that you don't really think about. And I remember the first night we did in an arena, I went out and I just played it as if it was a tiny comedy club, and very quickly realised. I mean, I sort of even tried to chat to someone on the front row, and very quickly realised that doesn't work in an arena.
The front row is like the back of the Comedy Store, isn't it, in an arena? So it's
they're not only so far away, but you can't hear what they're saying back.
Yeah.
No one else in the arena can see or hear them. It doesn't work, but you just have to learn that by doing it and then realising it doesn't work.
Yeah, because you use a lot of the audience in your act, and you say like bouncing off them, but I suppose in the tours, did you try and stick to your material so you could deliver it and not use the audience as much?
Yeah, that was a really good exercise for me, actually, because I physically couldn't talk to the audience, so I had to do like a really tight 15 minutes of just material, which is something that I've done, but I would always throw in a couple of minutes of audience chat in there.
Yeah.
But in those arenas, you can't do any of that, so you just have to do material, which was a really good learning thing for me. And also, the gigs don't always go very well. I mean, particularly if you're the opening act, quite a lot of the time when you walk out there, you're like 50% of the arena haven't sat down yet, and they're all walking around trying to find their seats.
I know, yeah.
So a lot of the time, those gigs are not very easy, and you actually feel on stage like it's not going very well. But learning how to keep going and not make it look like you're panicking, and just kind of perform it as if you're smashing it, even if you're not. That's a really important skill.
I guess that's why we're there for. Sometimes I've done some warm-ups for some groups. You know, the biggest venue I've done was the Albert Hall with Kenny G, and a very sophisticated audience, you know, waiting for the saxophone, and a guy with a puppet comes out. But they're all walking in. They're walking in, and you're doing... I guess you can pick on them while they're walking in. Sometimes I do that, but you are there really just to feel that moment, and then they can have an interval, sell loads of beer, and come back. But it must be an incredible thing to go out at the O2 and do massive rooms in one go, you know.
Yeah, it's a pretty amazing kind of feeling. And actually the O2 gigs, I think, were some of the best ones for me, because, like I said before about the audience not all being sat down, weirdly, at the shows at the O2, we did 3 nights there. For all 3 nights, when it came to 8 o'clock, when I went on, the entire arena was sat down, which was like pretty... Because normally I would have a look out from the side before I went on. And I would see that, you know, half of them were sat down and half of them weren't.
Yeah.
And that was fine. But then I remember the first night in the O2, looking out from the side of the curtain and seeing the entire arena sat down.
Oh, that's nice.
And I was like, oh, hell, this is quite scary.
Yeah, I don't think they wanted to miss the warm-ups as well, you know. I mean, not warm-ups, but, you know, I mean, when I've had warm-ups in the past, I just call them, they are part of the show, you know, and it's a shame to miss that part of the beginning part of it.
So. Whenever I go to see someone, I always want to watch the support act.
I went to see Elvis Costello, and I enjoyed his warm-up more than I enjoyed him, actually. And
controversial.
Can't even think of the name. Larkin Poe, they were a great girl group. But I mean, you never know. You know, it's those big names that you tour with. So Jack Whitehall, Kevin Bridges, Michael McIntyre, Ramesh, Ragnathan. Did they give you any inspiration or advice while you're on the tour? I know Jack Whitehall helped you out, but did you get any more advice from those guys?
Yeah, loads. I mean, I would look at doing the tour support as the main thing that I feel like has made me better as a stand-up.
Right.
And I think if you're a new comedian, I think supporting someone on tour is one of the best ways to get better, because you learn so much. A, because you're playing venues that you wouldn't normally play. They're much bigger than you would normally do.
Yeah.
So that gives you a lot of confidence to play bigger rooms. And also you just get to spend a lot of time with someone who is, you know, really good at comedy. And you just by spending time with them, you pick up things that they do and how they work. And the main thing with all of those people that you mentioned, and anyone who I've worked with who's sort of at the top of the industry, the main thing that I think sort of they all have is just that work ethic.
Yeah.
It's just that like insane work ethic that all of those people have, and you see it when you're on tour with them, that they're always changing things and trying to make the show better, and that is the main thing that I think I've tried to take on, is that it's just that like not ever being satisfied with it and always trying to make it better.
Yeah, I imagine they're perfectionists, those guys, you know, because they're working up to their latest DVD or Netflix special, aren't they? And I guess it's got to be pristine. It's got to be funny. Every line that comes out your mouth has got to be funny, and it's got to be right, hasn't it?
I mean, I just watched the other day the new McIntyre's got a Netflix special that's just come out.
I watched it last week with Nina. It's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so great, and there were jokes in that show that I remember doing gigs with him 2 years ago, and he did those jokes, and they were great back then, but they're so much more polished now when you watch it on the Netflix thing.
Yeah.
And that's just like, he's obviously been polishing and refining that for the last 2 years, so that they actually change quite a lot. And when you're on tour with someone, the show that they do changes quite a lot from the beginning to the end.
Okay, that's interesting.
And that's, yeah, it's just that thing of like, you know, always working on it and not getting complacent.
Yeah. Did you watch any stand-ups when you were growing up? You know, were you inspired by any particular ones?
Yeah, I used to watch. There were two that I used to watch. I used to watch Lee Evans, and I used to watch Billy Connolly.
Oh wow,
And,
two of my top fives. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all of my family were really into Lee Evans and Billy Connolly, so we always used to watch it all together. So they were the first two stand-ups that I saw, really. And then I think as I got a bit older, I started to get into sort of more American stuff. And I remember when I was a teenager being really into like Chris Rock and Jerry Seinfeld.
Wow, yeah.
And then I got into like Bill Hicks and Louis C.K. And then I got really into American stuff for a while.
Yeah, so you got into quite the stronger material. I mean, I saw you on the roast program that you did, the roast battle. That was brilliant. That was brilliant with Nigel. Was it Nigel?
Yeah.
Oh, that was incredible. Yeah, I mean, sat there, I could tell that Jimmy Carr was enjoying because he's quite cutting, isn't he, in some of his put downs and stuff. But how did you come up with that material, and was you scared about doing any of it, or were you just happy to knock him down with the? I mean, he gave you back as good, didn't he? But
yeah, I mean, it's a really, that's one of the scariest things I've done in my career, that show.
It looked terrifying.
It's quite out of character for me as well. I'm not like a particularly like aggressive comedian.
No.
So there are some comedians that kind of suit that roast battle style. And I'm not a very like offensive comedian, so it was quite a different thing for me to do. And I kept writing jokes about Nigel, and then sort of talking to the producers of the show and saying, "What do you think of this joke?" And they kept saying, "It's not mean enough. Like you need to go more offensive." Really?
So it was quite produced. Yeah, they were really working with you on it then. Wow.
Yeah, well, they want that sort of like shock factor. That's what the show. That's what makes people like the show. Is that like that when you watch it and you go, "Oh, I can't believe he's just said that." So I went through quite a few stages of writing those jokes to get to the ones that actually went on. But,
they were genius. But I mean, just to see Jimmy Carr and Catherine actually shocked in their faces is for you to shock them. And then I've heard them say things that have shocked me, so it's brilliant.
Well, I just wanted one of those big, famous Jimmy Carr laughs. That's what I wanted.
You got a few of them.
And I got a few of them, so I was really happy with that.
I'd like to know what was really written in that Chinese cracker as well, you know,
Well, that weirdly was an idea that I had like an hour before we filmed it. So
really?
I was sat like in the dressing room waiting to do it. And I thought I had that idea, and I spoke to one of the people who work on the show and said, "Do you think this is funny?" And they were like, "Yeah, you should definitely do that." So then somebody from the production team had to go out and buy a cracker, and they had to do it in like half an hour. And I remember we filmed it in Brixton. They were running around Brixton trying to find somewhere that sold crackers, and then I did it. But yeah, that was quite a last minute thing.
It was brilliant, yeah. To do props. I know Jimmy commented on your prop, but it worked, didn't it? Short and sharp.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. You've been signed up by the biggest company off the curb, which have had amazing acts like Phil Jupitus and Jack D. And did you actually know Addison Cresswell, who I know we lost about 5-6 years ago? Did you know Addison, or did you know of him?
I didn't, to be honest. He was not
a bit too late.
I joined, I think, a couple of months after he died.
Oh, really?
So I've heard like hours of stories.
Yeah.
But I never met him, no.
That's a shame. I was in Edinburgh Festival when they done a tribute to him actually the same year, and it was a lovely tribute. And Phil Jupitus was on. There were so many acts that went on to talk about him and just do stand up. It went on for about 2 hours, but.
Yeah, well, I know, and I've heard every comedian I've worked with has told me different stories about him.
Really?
So I've heard a lot about him, but no, I think I joined. I think I literally signed like the month or the second month after he died.
I'm sure Addison would have loved you. I'm sure his team sounds like they know what they're doing, and he's built up such a great team at Off the Curb, and it's just a brilliant that it's carrying on in his name, you know.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic, and also they were sort of there very early on in my career, so I sort of met them when I was about 18 years old.
Okay.
So So I really feel like they've been there right from the start, which I think is very nice, to have that. And it wasn't like they sort of became interested when other agents were interested. They were sort of the first ones to show any interest, which is a good thing.
That's brilliant. Really get signed up straight away. What your fans would like to know, and me included, is do you have a Netflix special or a DVD schedule? Because I went on Amazon to look for a Tom Lucy DVD, and all that comes up is Lucy and Tom children's books by Shirley Hughes. Did you know she's writing about your childhood? But do you have anything coming up, or is it top secret at the moment?
Well, no, I mean, it's all a bit weird at the moment, isn't it? I mean, the whole industry is in a very weird place.
I guess it's stopped for a while, yeah.
There were quite a few things that I was going to be doing this year that have all been pushed back to next year. But even some of the things that have been pushed back to next year have been pushed back again even further. Right. So, to be honest with you, I'm sort of trying to just sort of stay calm and not get too frustrated about it, because it's so out of everyone's control. Yeah. That I'm trying to just sort of take it sort of week by week, and there's lots of filming things happening, and there's a few gigs that are happening, but yeah, it's hard to sort of make any concrete plans at the moment because everything's so unstable.
Yeah, I used to love getting an email for the next booking, but every time I get one now, it is another cancellation, and you kind of think, when's it going to be pushed back, when it's going to be stopped. But I think Netflix and all of the comedy programs, and Dave, I think it's really cheered people up this year. We've needed the television really for.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, the what I've been sort of saying to people to try and keep people's spirits up is that. Historically, when these terrible world events happen, people kind of turn to comedy and the arts for sort of guidance, and even it becomes even more important than it was before. So I'm quietly confident that when this has all calmed down a bit, that comedy might have a real boom, because it's been such a bleak, depressing 18 months. We might actually see our industry sort of really have a renaissance. I
think it will, yeah. I think the Edinburgh Festival would be incredible next year. And I saw an Edinburgh review of you when you was in the Sunday Post, and it was a lovely thing that said about you, and it sums up a true star and a gesture that will stand out and remembered for years to come. It was, once the gig finished, I noticed Tom run into the exit, and I thought this may have been just to escape the incredibly warm cellar room, but in actual fact he was there to make sure he was able to shake everyone's hand as they left the venue, a classy touch. Now, that makes it look like you're grateful for your audiences, or you're just thanking your hecklers, or that's just was that just a genuine thing you wanted to do? Because I don't see many people do that.
That was my first show in Edinburgh. And I don't know if you know the Pleasant Cellar, but it's tiny.
It is, yeah.
And it holds about 40 or 50 people.
Yeah, the great thing. You can do that at the O2, could you?
Yeah, exactly. So I just thought it would be a nice thing to do, to sort of to just stand as people are leaving and thank them for coming. Because I just thought, when you go and watch shows in Edinburgh, it's nice if you get that kind of. I've been at a few gigs where people have done that, and I've always thought that was a really nice thing to do at the end.
Yeah.
So I just thought, I'll do that when I do my first show. So, yeah, I mean, the idea of doing that now when you're not allowed to shake anyone's hand would be terrifying.
Oh, yeah, that's turned it on its head. I've met Lee Evans a few times at the stage doors, and he's been incredibly kind to his fans always, and he doesn't want to leave. I remember a couple of times at the Apollo, and Addison wanted to go, but Lee wanted to stay and chat, and it goes unnoticed. That, do you know what I mean? Something that you do will be talked about, which is a nice thing to do. So good for you.
I agree. I've met Lee Evans in that situation as well before. I think it's nice.
Yeah, I googled something earlier, Key and Peele, which I want to thank you for the substitute teacher. It was. I had a look at that earlier when I was in his stitches. That's so funny. Yeah. I'm loving me Alan Partridge and me Gervais. and Steve Coogan. I love that cringe comedy, you know, where
Yeah. Oh, me too. That's some of my favourite stuff.
yeah, my wife hides behind her hands, but I'm just crying with tears of laughter.
It's
Tom,
the best.
it was a pleasure working with you a couple of years ago, mate. It was a nice gig that for Mind charity. It was a good night.
Yes, yeah, it was fun. Yeah, really fun. Really fun.
It's a pleasure watching your rise to the top. You're a great talent, and I really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks a lot, Steve. It's really nice to talk to you. It's a lot. Bye.
Bye.
Eyes and teeth.
Thanks to Tom Lucy. Keep an eye on him. He's going to be big. To see more of Tom and keep up to date on his upcoming shows and appearances, go to www.tomlucy.com, on Twitter, Tom Lucy, and on Instagram and Facebook, Tom Lucy. Today's comedy quote comes from Bill Hicks. It's always funny until someone gets hurt. Then it's hilarious. Eyes and Teeth is written, produced and hosted by Steve Hewlett. That's me. Vocals by Rich T, Lola, Larissa and Nina Hewlett. Jingles and the Eyes and Teeth theme music produced and performed by Kevin Dean at Pixie Studios. If you are enjoying these podcasts, please download, share with your family and friends, and please don't forget to review. Tune in next time when I will reveal my next special guest on 12 Days of Podcasts, Eyes and Tinsel, the Christmas season.
Eyes and teeth.
Ho, 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 ho! Merry Christmas!